Cool. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Gamer in the Max and part 3 of our Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich, the Russian Empire. So, in the last episode, we have been steadily trying to depose Samenkov up here. I think we were waiting for just a few more days. We're trying to hold out for like the extra 90 days here to get this mining, the Norslick mining and metallurgy for the extra steel and chromium production. And then in that time period, we'll get all three of those. So these are actually really useful if we can hold out for the 3 months to get that. We only have one more before the military anger gets too high. I could court the military if I saved up 100 political power, but that's actually very, very hard to get to that. So the first project complete. Under the Republic, Russia stagnated. Her industry was betrayed to foreigners and German bankers, getting fat off the hard labor of our people, while feeble politicians stood shamelessly back and watched. No more. Now the country celebrates the beginning of a new era of self-reliance as the first Voshgod project is finally completed. There were many hardships along the way, but as the project came to a close yesterday, it seems to have all been worth it. Later that day, President Samenkov himself gave a speech thanking the Voshgod laborers and stating that this was just the first of many triumphs. Gain 25 political power and change the popularity of national populism +3. Not that I much care for that, but so we'll get this done. Once this is done and we're over, we will be establishing the empire. Electoral deadlock in the United States. There's the urban housing program, the road to recovery. The German oppression struck Russia like a tidal wave, and though the floodwaters have not entirely receded, it's become clear that the worst has passed. Bread lines that once snaked across the whole city blocks have dwindled. Curfews intended to stop riots and looting have been lifted. Shuttered factories have been stocked back to life. Muscovites laugh that the new government must be run by an artel of sign painters who have made fortune prettying up the city's new storefronts. The rapid and decisive intervention planned by the VES has helped offset the most crippling damage, albeit at a cost. Hardship still lies ahead. The only thing still plentiful after Black Monday was the evidence that the economic ties between Russia and Germany were fundamentally flawed. Russia rebuilds for now, but a reckoning is coming. Russia stands strong, lose one military and popular anger, and should the military anger be below 5, it's likely that a revolution would cause a military counter-coup. Electoral deadlock in the United States. With the political and economic situation in the United States deteriorating throughout the past year, it was widely expected that this year's presidential election would not result in a decisive winner in November. Indeed, with the vote split between 4 significant parties, no candidate was able to reach an electoral college majority, just as the case was 4 years ago. What was not expected was a disastrous performance of the Democratic Party. Coming in fourth place, they will be excluded from January's contingent election, leaving the Republicans and the farmer labor candidates to compete with Huey Long for support of Congress to decide who will be elected the next president. To the nation and the world awaits the decision with a bated breath. Too much liberty can be a bad thing. So there's Alfred Manuel Smith, so he lost it. Looks like the market liberals actually have the most control there, so we'll see. On American shores, now piloting a new Skorsky float plane rather than the single-engine Tupolev from their last flight. Shakalov and his crew braved the perilous skies of the Arctic Circle in a marathon 60-hour flight. However, the flight crew did not receive the hero's welcome they grown accustomed to upon landing in the sparkling waters outside of San Francisco. U.S. Coast Guards and Navy vessels descended upon the beleaguered aircraft, even as both the Russian crew and radio operators on the shore insistently broadcasted their status as a civilian sporting craft. Newspapers around the globe have now printed photos of the smiling Shakalov, Bidikov, and Belikov being manhandled onto an American destroyer, apparently unperturbed by this turn of events on their record-setting flight. The American Pacific Fleet and government have both hastily issued apologies, but not before shifting blame for the miscommunication onto one another. Success. Alexander Kolchak gains aviation enthusiast. Valerian Kokachavas Kolokov becomes a flying ace, and we gain 5 air experience. I know I am absolutely butchering these names. I think someone said that. They're like, wow, you're really bad at yeah, I know. I've I know. Sorry. I will start doing these ones, which will help me plan for a war. So this can pressure Finland. This we have to have at least 3 members in our faction. This will help us in the Belgrade pack, so this will probably be pretty important to get starting out. We want synthetic refineries. The Belgrade Pact will be Greece, Serbia, and Romania. The Schleicher passes the Enabling Act, so Germany is staying with the Schleicher Pact, the Cabinet Schleicher. Um, the degrading economic situation in the German Empire led to strikes, street clashes, and ultimately a revolution attempt at the deindustrialized Duchy of Brunswick. Socialist revolutionaries briefly occupied the city and sent a wave of terror and fear throughout the empire. Reich Chancellor Kurt von Schleicher used the opportunity to present an enabling act before the Reichstag. Legislation would allow him to restore order with emergency powers. Fearful of a revolution, the parliamentaries approved the act, even if in the long term it might be a mistake. Schleicher is now almost unassailable. It's likely that he will use the opportunity to begin reshaping Germany into a centralized military new state and consolidate the control of his military clique. Another example of inherent German reactionism. Yeah, so now you get the Schleicher cabinet, the regime of the Red General. A coup d'etat in Algiers, the thinly military junta of Marshal Philippe Pétain has fallen to a coup d'etat led by his former allies, General Henry Mordac. The legitimacy of the marshal's rule had been steadily eroded by the accusation of nepotism and corruption, and an attempt to centralize power in his hands aided accusations of tyranny to the long list of grievances towards him. Precipitating the coup, Pétain is now in custody, and General Mordac has been elected head of state. Though he has announced that the civil liberties suspended under the previous regime would be restored and promised an eventual return to full democratic rule, the general has announced that for the time present, a committee of national salvation made up of military men, experts, and parliamentarians would be created to best implement the reform he feels are need to retake the French mainland. He should have seen this coming. So now you have Henry Mordac under an authoritarian Democrat. German East Asia took 2 states and they beat out Indochina. And the civil war in Spain has kicked off. I think we can send support. No. The Spanish Civil War. Since the defeat of Napoleon, Spain has been plagued by violence, dissent, and turmoil. No amount of pleading, deal-making, and appeasement has managed to do more than paper over the cracks as tensions bubbled. Finally, they boiled over. The Spanish kingdom has been ripped apart by a 3-sided civil war between numerous factions: the loyalists of the Madrid government, the supporters of the pretender Javier, and finally the anarcho-syndicalist CNT-FIA. There was already numerous reports of volunteers and equipment being shipped to Spain from all over the world to support one faction or another. Spain will be torn to shreds as the battlefield for the ideological forces of the wider world. It was inevitable. World tensions increased by 5. There is something I was going to ask you all, and I'll let you guys decide. Down here, at some point, we can form a republic or a Turkestan Republic down here. If you guys would be interested in that, or I can take all of it. I probably will lean towards allowing. The Indo-Chinese Revolution has been defeated, as expected. They fled to other countries. But I'd like to know your all's opinions in the comments about if you would like to see more of a stability focused Russia. So we will be allowing puppets and everything like that, or do you want occupation everywhere? To be honest with you, occupations are really, really hard in Kaiserreich and Kaiser Redux for the fact that when you take over a country, you just continue to get negative debuffs until you release them. So we could release them as a big puppet. They can get all their core lands, and they make units for us and stuff. The Spanish question. A civil war has broken out in Spain between the royal government and socialist revolutionaries. Immediately, the cause of Spanish whites has caused some excitement and sympathy among patriotic Russians, and the Green Union has already started to organize both donations and possibly a volunteer force to be sent there. Viktor Larinov, a prominent SZRS member, has already declared Svoboda, freedom for what is going on in Spain, is yet another repeat of bloody Russian fratricide, and that it would be our moral duty to help. But in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the situation is more complex. If one looks at Europe as a board of chess between the Germanic world and their enemies, then the defeat of the Spanish Revolution would only put Spain back in the arms of the Germans, something the French government in Paris is keenly aware of. In a clandestine meeting between our foreign minister and the French ambassador, a secret deal was proposed. Russia would remain neutral in the Spanish affair and block any attempts by Russian citizens to go fight in Spain, unless it is for the revolutionary cause. Spain would thus be considered part of the French sphere of influence. In return, the French promised to withdraw from funding socialist movements in Russia and Eastern Europe for the time being. Spain will be considered French for now. Kingdom of Spain and Carlos Spain disapproves of our government. We gain 50 political power, lose a negative 3% national populism. Or do we not fight communism in all of its forms? We lose 55,000 manpower. Carlist Spain gets our Russia's volunteer corps. So if you guys would like to know how this works, the Carlists are always supported by the Entente. That actually, I think, is the only ones they can join. Yeah, see, join the Entente. It's the only one they are allowed to join. Though they do get pretty good focus trees. This, I don't think it's as big as the focus tree in the actual base game for them. But then you have the Kingdom of Spain, who will always go to the right pack, usually. I don't think I've ever seen them join the Entente. They can go we stand alone, but I also don't think I've ever seen them do that, to be 100% honest with you. I only have ever seen them join the Reichspakt. And then, of course, you have the CNT-FIA, who we don't want to win. They will immediately join the Third International. So, really, Carlos Spain would be the only one we would want to support. But we could also get some political power. They might not like us, but we're not going to be national populists for very long anyway. And I don't want to boost Germany any more than they already are during our war. So this will also be something that's very unpopular when the military coups, because they'll be wondering why we abandoned our Spanish friends. So Spain will be considered French in the time, for the French sphere for now, in the 50 political power. It also will come to what we need, because the Commune of France and England, we have a trade deal we can do to them over here, the Franco-Russian treaty. If they both accept, we get negative at 15% consumer goods factor, 5% research, and we lose 40 oil. So once the war with Germany breaks, then we lose that. But if you can get it early, because Russia starts with a lot of well, we will have a lot of oil. That's what I should say. Our oil does not look good right now, actually. Oh, did I not? My bad. I thought I had sold. And after a while, if these are not wanting to sell, you can always just put them onto normal pricing, and you'll probably see an influx of selling of these, because they're only going to buy what they can on the market. So we'll just go to normal for everything. Oh, did it? I guess I had to hit confirm for everyone there. My bad. And when war starts, we can always just take these guys back out of... They're pretty much in storage, but they're making us money if we sell them. But Navy, Air Forces at the beginning of the game, no matter what country you're a part of or where you're at, are always the weakest thing that you'll find. So, like these pea shooters, or not pea shooters, but the small framed, they're just not good enough to want to keep. There we go. We might see some more people starting to buy. And then down here, we want to pass this one, the nationalization of the Rugen's core, which is where we can get some oil from, or we can get some more steel and chromium. Naval dockyards. We can influence Poland, lend our support for more volunteers. This will allow us logistics in Turkestan, roadworks in Central Russia. Do that. bit of infrastructure. We do need to do those two as well. There's a lot of things that kind of have to do. We'll get to 44 days. The military anger is kind of low right now, so we can utilize the army once these get a little bit closer. Hetman Skorbunensky flees Ukraine. For the first time, the German-inclined state of Ukraine, led by Hetman Pavlo Skorbunensky, has been embroiled in a Republican uprising. Now it seems the future of the Hetman is in jeopardy with news that Skorbunensky has fled the country. After a successful assault on Kiev, the Republican opposition declared the restoration of the Ukrainian People's Republic. Though this development has put Germany's grips on its eastern client state in doubt, the new government has already reached out to Berlin to negotiate their future relationship. This is what happens when you depend on petty tyrants. Usually, if the Ukrainian People's Party comes about, the Kumul Khanate declares war on the Xinjiang clique. They usually will join the Russians, and the Xinjiang clique erupts into war. So, Paraguay falls to syndicalism again. Port Paraguay. Better excavation. What we will do now is utilize the army, since we're close to getting these done. Once we can do that, it increases their military anger, and then we can do it again, and that will put us over the 8 needed to throw a military coup against Savinkov, and then we'll actually be the Russian Empire again. We'll get that, which is 2 civilian factories, so the more civilian factories we have, the more we can build. And there you go. And the Ukrainian People's Republic joins Dana Ubra. I'm sorry, Dano Adrabund, the reformist soldier. I really wish Austria would get an update to their focuses. It's not bad, but I think all of these guys really need a good, thorough come along, because these are all of their puppets are just normal base game. So, I mean, I know they're working on this game a lot, so I'm not like being picky about it. I'm just saying I would like to see that. I'm going to do the Chinese Gambit because the Chinese are starting to kick off, and the more support we can send over here, the easier it will be to have an ally in China. Memoirs of a Terrorist Part 1. Boris Viktorovich was born in Kharkov in 1879 in a middle-class family and spent much of his youth in Warsaw and then in St. Petersburg. His father, a judge, was dismissed for his liberal views. His brother, Alexander, a social democrat, was sent to Siberia and committed something. The older brother, Victor, would follow Boris's footsteps. He was arrested for the first time when he was 18 for taking part in a student riot at a socialist organization. After a short stint in Germany and Switzerland, he eventually sent to exile in Volgograd. This brought the young man into the Socialist Revolutionary Combat Organization in 1903. He later recalled his short years in the combat organization as the formative period of his life. His cell took part in multiple high-profile assassinations, such as the Minister Plev and Grand Prince Sergei Alexandrovich. It was during this time that he met Alexander Dikov, a fellow terrorist who would become the longtime confidant. During this time, Savinkov immersed himself in the philosophy of terror, murder, and Nietzsche. Formulated his ideas of Knights of Terror as a source of societal change, drawing from the terrorist Narodist traditions of Narodonia Volia. There was a snake in paradise. In 1908, the leader of the combat organization, Yevno Azov, Boris's mentor, was revealed to be an agent provocateur in service of the Al-Qaeda. In his own words, this broke Savinkov's spirit. What little belief in socialism or Narodism he may have had was shattered, and cynicism won in the end. As he described himself, he became the underground man from Dostoevsky's novel, an anti-hero in a permanent state of ideological crisis and mental anguish, a terrorist without a cause. A terrorist of a bygone era, change in popularity of national populism 1%. Boy, that was kind of hard for me to read. I apologize. The legation cities changed their diplomatic stance, cancels non-aggression pact. Are you in one sphere or the other? No? You're staying market liberals right now. A hitch in reforms. While past land reforms have seen redistribution of land from nearly every socialist state in Russia, one has remained conspicuously untouched. The aftermath of the Civil War saw many military officers cash in their retirements on tracts of cheap land purchased from the National Land Fund. Many actively serving officers did likewise, further complicating the question of how, if at all, this land is to be redistributed. With many former landowners penniless and unable to repurchase their old lands, this class of officers quickly filled the gap as one of the most disproportionately land-rich groups in Russia. The officers naturally assert that their proud service to the nation entitles them to the land that they both earned and bought fairly. Beyond simply holding vast tracts of land, it's become increasingly clear that the present situation is also caustic to army morale, as many enlisted presents have been dealt the ignominy of being commanded by the landlords. President Samakov has refrained from commenting directly so as to not offend the military's delicate honor, but his writings extolling the Kazakh model of peasant farmer soldiers have often been cited by proponents of the reform. Distributing the officers' land may win back flagging public opinion, but earning new enemies in the military is no cheap trade either. They must surrender their lands with everybody else, or they deserve their exemptions. Again, we're trying to be very unpopular with the military, so I'm going to click on this. We have 13 days that we can kind of allow this to go. I need to get this up, so I'm just going to click these. They won't finish by the time we're started. So Alf Landon is elected president of the United States, which is the Republican choice. The moderate Republican liberal with ties to the oil lobby. Landon's election has been cause of the consternation of both Huey Long and the Socialist Party. I highly doubt Landon can fix America. So we're going to wait a few days for this hitch and reforms, then we're going to do they must surrender their lands. I want to get as close to the 13 days as possible because I don't want this to occur when this is so close to being done, because this will put us over the 8 needed. So we'll wait to the very last day for this. The preachings of Ali Kayev. Controversy has captured headlines in the Dagestani city of Petrikov. Ali Kayev, a noted Islamic jurist and Sharia scholar, has broken his long-standing silence on political issues. In a sermon before his assembled students, Ali Kayev decried the creeping autocracy of Samankov's reign, demanding the Russians of all nations and creeds rise up against the freedoms of the February Revolution. With the region already abuzz over the manifesto of resistance and anti-Savinkov pamphlet, Ali Kayev inflammatory words have further stroked tensions. A lack from the ancient city of Gezakamuk. Ali Kayev has spent most of his 58 years committed to the cause of democracy and education. Ali Kayev cooperated with various ephemeral Caucasian governments, or Caucasan governments during the Civil War, most controversially helping the Bolshevik-aligned forces by condemning the pro-white Nezdium Gutinsky claim to the title of Dagestani Imam. The end of the Civil War saw Ali Kayev reconcile neither with the white-aligned Dagestanis under General Nukbed Tarkov, nor with the Gadar Bamatov's exiled Mendes in Georgia. He instead returned to his original passions of education reform and ethnography, and the Russian government was largely content to leave him alone. Ali Kayev's change of heart has outraged local scholars and religious authorities who see Kayev's latest sermon as a betrayal of the clemency they had granted him. Some demand his immediate arrest, while others urge caution. Students from many of Dagestan's Islamic school, the madrasas, have walked out of classes with the blessing of their teachers to demonstrate in support of Ali Kayev. A soft touch here may embolden similar disobedience, but a harsh response can just as easily cause tensions to boil over. In prison, we can't afford rebel rousers, or I prefer his less polemical work. We lose 2.5% stability and gain resistance in Vladikavkaz, Tariq, and Chechnya. You're going to jail, Bubba. 3 days. And they must surrender their lands. Gives us 5 days. Hopefully in 5 days the military doesn't coup. Let's do the synthetic chemistry. Okay. We can end the program, which I will choose to do. I know these will not finish in time, since the war is over anyway. So we're just going to end the program. We finished 7 of them. The Voshed program has ended. Today, our Voshed project's complete. Today, Moscow is in celebration, though there have been many attempts to bring Russia into the modern era. None could claim success until the day the VES has declared the Vojkod program an undeniable success, citing rapid advances made in the industrial capacity, economic growth, and modernization of the countryside. A fireworks show took place on the Red Square to celebrate the triumph, along with a short military parade. Tanks produced in Vojkod-built factories featured among them. At the end, the leader himself gave a speech over the radio, thanking the people for their efforts and stressing the need for economic self-sufficiency and throwing off the German yoke and bringing about a government which is the truest expression of popular will. The president declared Russia has at long last been able to enter a new era of development. Despite the many criticisms endured because of the program, it seems that its completion has also been a major propaganda coup for Savinkov's rule. The Republic and Empire failed. The strong visionary leadership of the SZRS was ultimately required to rejuvenate the country, or so the party's supporters claim. Our efforts have not gone unnoticed by the German sphere either, though the goal of the program was economic competition with military opa, with the world seemingly stumbling from one crisis to another. It may not be long before competition between the two giants of the East finally spread to the battlefield. A difficult process, but a necessary one. Gained 5% stability, changed popularity of national populism by 5%, popular anger changes by -1. But it doesn't matter anyway, because when he took the land from the military members, he has caused a Russian coup. On the bayonet's end, the anger and suspicion of the Russian army has reached a flashpoint. Our intelligence services are trying to build the whole picture of the current events in Moscow, but it seems that a number of local units mutinied or were ordered to mutiny by someone higher up. The soldiers were demanding that Savinkov's commissaries and spies be taken away from the army and that the unexplained purges will stop. The local Putrid leader, Colonel Boris Fortunatovo, has been thought to be politically reliable, instead attempted to seize the Kremlin and key points in Moscow in a redo of the Boldarev and Kornilov attempts. The Special Purpose Battalion and the forces of the government are engaged in the fight, and it seems like the attempt would be left only as an attempt. Until it was revealed that this was only the first shot, we lose 10% stability, and we get the death of Savinkov. Goodbye, Mr. Boris. It was not fun knowing you. The death of Savinkov. It was midnight and the plan sprang into action. Units of the 2nd Guards Infantry Division had been transferred near Moscow for maneuvers weeks earlier. Tight security had been maintained to avoid Klepkov's all-seeing spy network. All operated on personal given orders between men who had fought and bled together decades prior. In the dead of night, the 13th Infantry Regiment would take over the Minister of Interior and decapitate Savinkov's intelligence services. The 200th Infantry Regiment would hit the main bridges and radio stations, while the 6th Infantry Regiment would escort Peter Wrangel to the Kremlin and arrest the president. Another division would be ordered to block the roads leading to Moscow. No matter who won, there would be firing squads tonight. The coup began catastrophically. Gostrazia units guarding the ministry refused to lay down their weapons, and a shootout began. Much better armed and trained regulars rapidly won out, but the delay led Savinkov be warned, and he had left the Kremlin by the time Peter Wrangel got there. Fortunately for the Putrists, the president's convoy was intercepted on his way to Bukov Airport. Savinkov's armor-plated Buick became the center of a shootout, and his guards, including his trusted spy master Klepkov, were killed in the crossfire. Wounded, Savinkov himself was captured and shortly after executed after a drumhead court-martial held by Peter Wrangel. Among the charges were mass murder, sabotage, and corruption. The body was burned soon after, and a mass arrest of the Savinkovs began. We did it. We saved Russia. We gained base stability, -10%. Boris Savinkov dies. Peter Wrangel becomes the leader of the paternal autocrats. He gains politically connected. He adds 1 empty assignable trait slot, adds 1 planning skill, appoints advisor Alexander Gotslin, which gives us political power gain plus 5%, stability plus 5%, and resources to market -15%, and the Russian army becomes the ruling party. We get the focus, control, the Supreme Court. We did it. We saved Russia. Savinkov overthrown by the military. Boris Savinkov is dead as the president's actions increasingly angered both the populace and the military. A military coup was launched against him, led by Peter Wrangel. The army secured the Kremlin and intercepted the Voseda escape's attempt. He was court-martialed and shot. Provisional government has taken up the task of restoring Russian democracy and monarchy under the protection of the Field Marshal Wrangel. What will that mean for us? It means that we can start to bring about the all-Russian party. Actually, it's not. This will change once we do the restore the government, or the Russian Empire. We can support the Konyong-Wellington coup in the Beijing government. Formation of the 3rd All-Russian Constituent Assembly. This is what we were waiting for. Citizens of Russia, the brave Russian army under the command of General Field Marshal Peter Wrangel is maintaining order with a smooth transition to stability and normal civic life is ensured after these dark years. Martial law will stay in place for your own safety. As I, representing the entire provisional government and making the statement from the Senate Palace, we are gathering the democratically elected representatives of the 1934 elections, not counting those deemed traitors to the Russian people. They, alongside legal experts from the Supreme Court, will begin amending the Constitution of the Russian Democratic Federative Republic to remove the provisions that the late president's regime inflicted upon us. The work of the Third All-Russian Government Constituent Assembly will be swift but wise, God help us. In a month or two, all of Russia will be taking part in the free elections that will hopefully restore normalcy to our nation. Chairman of the Provisional Council of Ministers, Alexander Galston. Let's get to work. Unlocks the Third All-Russian Constituent Assembly. The military demands actions and building support for restoration. We will promulgate a new Russian constitution. Click on the Decision tab and choose at least 6 articles to enshrine in the Constitution, all while ensuring that a majority of the faction, as well as the military, approve of the new document. The decision that we take will have further consequences. Let's get to work, and this is what we get. Now, somebody said he would like to see the state orthodoxy and what else was it? I don't think we can see it here. But it was the Eurasianist theory for monarchy. So I think it's down here. Disables the protector of all faith and strength of the electoral campaign. Then there's restrict nationalization. The right to proper property is ensured against tyrannical nationalization. The monarchists oppose this. Enshrine the military's role. This disables the national focus republicanization of the army. It'll be impossible to turn the nation towards socialism. I'm okay with that. The right SR and the socialist faction doesn't like that. So, and you kind of have to do this where, like, I want to do Russia as a monarchy, but you have to watch out because if you do it, say like this one, disables the never another Savinkov national focus, strengthens the solidified presidential power national focus. You have to watch out because when we get done, and just the way that we had the military and the popular anger, we'll have socialist anger. And if you get that too high, the socialist can coup the government. So you kind of have to balance this. I know you're probably like, I just want all monarchists or I want all of this. You can't do it, sadly, because that will actually hurt you quite a bit at the end of the Constitution. So, weakened federalism or the power are extended, they are given more. So the monarchists oppose and entrenched federalism. State orthodoxy disables the national focus, protector of all faith, and strengthens the electoral campaign of the All-Russian Patriotic Party. Enshrine the military's rule. So first off, Russia's a monarchy. That's what we're hoping to get. So socialists and the SR don't like us, but the military and the monarchists do. This disables the national focus, maintain a strong executive, and solidify presidential power. The government can fall when faced with too much opposition. Or we could do executive decrees, which disables the never another Savinkov national focus, but strengthens the solidified presidential power national focus, which is what up here. So we get stability, or this one, which we can't see it just yet because we don't have it. But another never Savinkov is strong. The military monarchs and cadets like this one. So we'll do executive decrees. Increase the electoral threshold for favor of the cadet faction. Enables late game national focus, the first party of Russia. Or moving from a semi-majoritarian to a proportional system will favor the Radical Democratic Party and the Socialist Revolutionary Party. This one right here, legislative judicial review, disables the national focus, dictator of consciousness, and bring down the republic. It's impossible to create a socialist republic or Solomonevic's people's monarchy. So someone wants me to try the people's monarchy. I've actually never done it, so I don't know how it works. The Supreme Court is elevated as the first and last line of defense against government tyranny to avoid the substantial capture of the state by radicals. Many sectors of the legislation that are concerned with the structure of the government, the court system, or elections will require to the approval of the Supreme Court. Or we could do defense democratic clause, which military, cadets, and rightists are, but the monarchists don't like it. So we'll do this one. We'll do the weakened federalism. Do state orthodoxy. And we can do enshrine the military's role. But really we want to bump up the monarchist one more time. Don't think we can, so we'll just probably enshrine the military's role, and we should be able to pass. We just have to wait. The cadets faction has to approve the want for a monarchy. So Peter Rangel speaks out after opening the first session of the Constituent Assembly by Provisional Chairman Minister Goldskin. The Black Baron himself rose on the podium to address the 200 members of the Assembly. Rangel was a natural speaker with quite a bit of politician in his blood. He thanked the Assembly for their important work for the nation, but reminded them that ultimately the freedom of the Russian people had only been saved by the watchful army. However, if there had been a monarchy, even a relatively weak constitutional one, holding the most prestigious position in the nation, bandits such as Savinkov could never have gained total power. Well, the General Field Marshal avoided making any concrete demands of the Assembly and made it clear that ultimately he is a kingmaker, or would say a czar maker, and he only wishes that the gentlemen of the Assembly can put their ideological fever behind them and act as rational statesmen, judging the best for the whole nation in view of what has happened during the past 20 years. The applause was largely lukewarm outside the right wing. The sword of the Black Baron hangs over the Assembly, expecting a monarchist restoration, and there seems to be a few others. A constitution at saber point. And if we need to, see the cadets are building support for restoration. The speech of Dmitry Pavlovich Romanov. Later accounts would popularize Dmitry Romanov's speech to the Constituent Assembly as a dedicated factor for his restoration of monarchy in Russia. Honored representatives of the Constituent Assembly, let us consider a hypothetical scenario. If Russia has been a monarchy of sufficient authority in 1934, the parliamentary coup of the unjumped terrorists would not have become fait accompli. Instead, the emperor may have appointed an emergency government to deal with the threat in cooperation with those who had so proudly fought until the last. But instead, this democratically elected tyrant crushed all opposition after ascending to the highest office of the realm, not held by the emperor, but the ones who shout the loudest. Only the brave actions of Baron Rangel have saved countless more lives from death and torture. Am I condoning the military coup? Without it, many of you, ladies and gentlemen, would be hiding, arrested, or even dead. The Russian Republic was built with its brave army as the first and last line of defense, and all of us must admit that it worked, even if we had to go through terrible years first. I appeal to your reason, honored representatives. Let us not start another gamble. Democracy is a precious principle, yes, but it can also be hijacked or for nefarious goals, and the army is obviously not the ideal safeguard against this. Can you see any better safeguard than the existence of a constitution-embodied emperor, one with enough power to check any demagogue trying to gain power? Are you willing to gamble the future of your children in the hopes that another madman does not rise into power through the abuse of our democratic system? Can we really afford to repeat our mistakes? Even if your heart is against the monarchy, listen to your reason, for in politics it's often who gets the last say. Well spoken. We really want the military faction, or the monarchist faction, to be higher, but we don't want to lose the people's. So, it's Turkestan. Construction. Expansions of the wild battalions. The autonomy and in many cases outright lawlessness of the North Caucasus has made the region fertile grounds for militias. Action of the Savinkov regime sparked a new series of conflict in the Caucasus Mountains, and many separatist guerrilla forces never really stood down after the fall of Savinkov. The unrest in the Caucasus Mountains had led to an explosive growth among self-defense groups loyal to the Russian government, or at the very least opposed to communist guerrillas. Many of those forces are the personal retinues of local feudal lords or mullahs, particularly from privileged groups like the Kumyks, Kabardans, Cherkess, and Avars. These Muslim units have begun to cooperate closely with their Christian counterparts among the Ostians and Cossacks, and have gradually become known under the umbrella term of wild battalions. There's little doubt that this is a deliberate reference to the famous Caucasian Wild Division of the German War. Many wild battalion commanders are pleading with the federal government to do what the 1917 project failed to achieve. Organization expanding the wild battalions has widespread support, especially as the violence in the region has spilled out of the mountains and into the vulnerable lowlands and cities. However, many army officers loath to trust militias of dubious quality and argue that they would serve best as auxiliaries under the strict oversight of regular forces. On the other hand, wild battalion leaders have insisted on keeping their independence, arguing the excessive army meddling would stifle the mobility initiative that had made them so effective, and by using local forces, there would be less need to send Russian conscripts to the region. At least someone still thinks about them, arm them. We get pacification of the North Caucasus, Vladikavkaz, Terek, and Chechnya. Resistance negative 15%. We lose 500 infantry equipment, or we lose paternal autocracy. But we get pacification of North Caucasus. We could arm them. That's up here. I'd hate to lose paternal autocracy already. We could, I guess. Really, this is probably the best one. Still, we can arm them. Crisis in the cadet faction. Wrangel's proclamation that the army expects the restoration of the monarchy was like a fist in the face of the Russian liberals. The socialist revolutionary and the left almost immediately had a nervous breakdown, with Richter almost calling for a popular peasant uprising against the Tsarist baron. Only a small part of the SR party had been willing to adapt, but they were quickly silenced. The cadet faction in the assembly is numerous and could gain a majority together with the conservatives, but many of them are staunch Republicans at this point, most vocally Nerskov and Dolkarov. Even if they could be persuaded towards a constitutional monarchy, the fact that the monarchists clique the army is essentially forcing the assembly to legitimize a monarchical restoration at gunpoint is wrong in the principle for most. In private, Golskin visited the group and pleaded with the cadets to listen to reason. They would probably remain the strongest party in the monarchy regardless, especially if they could restore monarchy on their own terms and defang the more reactionary monarchists in the army. The right cadets like Karstrov and Konolov had even started to admit that there were some benefits to the Romanov restoration, arguing it could create political stability. One by one, the cadets were swayed either by cold, hard pragmatism, spineless ambition, or a genuine refound belief in the constitutional monarchy. On the fourth day of the assembly, a still hesitant Maklev had found himself at the helm of a largely constitutional monarchy's party. Amazing, the cadet faction supports a monarchy restoration, and cadets support this. So the cadets are 4, the monarchist faction is only 3. So really we need to hurt the cadets, or we could reset it. We might have to reset it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because the monarchists will not win this. The cadets probably will, or the military faction will. This one would really boost us, but we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen with this. I'm going to save real quick, though. And let's pass the Constitution. The constitutional draft is approved or accepted. The Third All-Russian Constituent Assembly has accepted the new Russian Constitution after a lengthy debate. Even though it's not been ratified by the Duma, it's highly likely that the consensus holds for possible minor alterations. The politicians and legal experts of the Assembly have given the constitutional draft to the interim government and resigned in unison, dissolving the body. Hopefully their documents will prove stronger against authoritarianism than his predecessor did. We gain 50. Peter Wrangel gets the election of the Imperial Regent, and he announces the elections. So maybe we actually get to choose. I can't remember. My mind has not played this in a very long time. So election of the Imperial Regent. As official coronation is yet to take place, the Constitution defines that without a reigning monarch, a regent will be appointed to govern the state. With this prestige and role in both restoring democracy and monarchy, Baron Wrangel has the natural choice to hold the title. His time as head of state will naturally be short. The Russian Democratic Federative Republic will be known as the Russian Empire. There we go. The Empire is back. Peter Wrangel announces the elections. The Kremlin and its temporary occupant, General Field Marshal Peter Wrangel, has made a much expected announcement. Elections, the first ones, what seems like an eternity, will be held in 3 months. Regardless of the election outcome, the state of the emergency upheld by the military will be ended afterwards, and the power will be fully transferred into the hands of the civilian government. But it's clear that Peter Wrangel will manage a large amount of influence behind the scenes. Russia's major parties are fervently preparing, trying to fill their ranks, collecting funds, and rebuild both their party machinery and their ideas. Everyone understands how important the 1937 election is going to be. Unlike a normal election style or cycle where not every position is elected simultaneously, now all seats in both chambers of the Duma are up for grabs, and similarly all gubernatorial Dumas Perhaps this is another beginning for a new, better Russia. Democracy is restored and activates missions. Election campaigns in progress. So we got restoration of democracy. We can fund the LAF, which is the in Lithuania. Could help Poland with their national populists. A number of factories. This is actually a really, really good focus right here. We can support their government. The Beijing government gets who is that person? Let me click on you real quick. Oh, you're the actual governor now. Growing up a wealthy bureaucrat. Huh. I don't know if the Beijing government. This is who they chose. Don't know if you guys can join us or not. I can't remember if they form their own faction or if they are allowed to join another faction. Let's see. What's our faction called? I don't know why I'm blanking on it. Moscow Accords. Board maybe? No. Yes, they can't, but it's alright. They might be able to later on. But we will support them. Helps the Beijing government. So we're going to be backing Beijing. What went wrong in 1934? Party conference in the Constitutional Democratic Petrograd. As a former president, the man who lost to Savinkov, Vasily Malakov, opened the meeting. His opening words will sum up the most important question the nation has to answer if he wishes to avoid repeating history. What went wrong in 1934 when the tyrant Savinkov rose to power through largely legal means? Many main failures of both the cadets and the SR to be identified. They had both embarked on an unwise war in the Far East. They ignored the anger of the Russian poor. They had become complacent, some point to close relations with Germany as their main failure, as Melikov himself admits. However, the day was stolen by an hour-long analysis by Professor Anton Kartyov, leader of the cadet right wing, who played a major role in swaying the cadet party into supporting the imperial restoration. In his speech, he paints a picture of a godless, secular, and chaotic republic, largely dictated by socialist revolutionary populism, both left and right, which trampled on good Russian virtues. To him, the time without a czar has been that of misery and chaos, a story anyone well versed in Russian history should know. These new troubles will only end with political stability given by a monarch and a responsible party such as the cadets in charge. It must be admitted that the Volksgeist of Russia at the moment seems to favor Kartyov, and many cadets would later describe the moment as if waking up from a nightmare. Some will defend republicanism, but they are drastically outvoted by the conference, and Kartyov was elected as the new president of the party. Let's see where it goes. Status quo favors the party. The cadets will do better in the elections. Woes of the Council of Land Division. The flagship promise of the SDRS, the Voivod's great land distribution, was never finished. However, the discontent countryside that propelled him into power and genuine concern, or had genuine concerns. Whether one opinion on the late Count Savinkov is, one must admit that his program to break up large estates and drag the Russian countryside into fairer, more efficient times was not wrong. The Council of Land Division, set up by Savinkov's Ministry of Agriculture, had continued functioning after him, trying their best to buy and redistribute farmland. However, with political turmoil, they have lost much of their funding and are generally in disarray. Almost all parties agree on continuing their work. If on a smaller scale, with less drastic measures, it would serve as a promise to the forgotten rule of Russia that Savinkov is not only the one who cared for them. The Social Revolutionary have been especially vocal on the matter, even demanding prioritization of the land reforms and funding. We have higher priorities, or we need to win the peasants' hearts and minds. We lose 40 political power, change in popularity of social liberalism by 1.5%, but it only adds 180 days to the land reforms. Oh, we were so close. We'll just do that one. The stability hurts, so I will move.
Внимание!
Let's see.
Внимание!
this is where they need to be to do this. Yeah. So move those tank divisions down. A future of the Socialist Revolutionaries. The new Central Committee of the Socialist Revolutionary Party is due to be elected at the party's conference in Samara, called by the current chairman, Vladimir Richter. After the party leadership paid homage to the great memorial of the People's Army of Komach, a Civil War era pride of the party, they settled to debate the future of the party and their electoral tactics. Truth be told, Richter was pressured to arrange a conference quickly before the elections due to internal pressure. Sure, he opposed Samenkov to the end and suffered for it in the Siberian winters. He spoke the last 3 words in the State Duma before the tyrant took over, but he was a hero of the circumstances, a dramatic martyr, and symbol. He's never been known as the most policy-focused man. He's a Chernoff at home, a perfectly archetypical socialist revolutionary, and now he is essentially calling for war against monarchists. Unsurprisingly, the stance on monarchy became the dominant topic of debate, while the chairman insisted on total government boycott to pressure the Tsar to eventually abdicate because of political unrest. Plenty of SRs were ready to accept the monarchy as a fait accompli. The relevant question now was how to reduce the monarch's power as much as possible. The leader of these monarch revolutionary, as their enemies mocked them, was Ilya Fundamensky, an old venerated SR. In Fundamensky's mind, the good fight has been fought, but now the SRs must mature and adapt. Richter's great revolutionary slogans work when overthrowing dictators, but such idealistic fever does not govern states. Instead, Fundamensky suggests leading more to the political center and modernization, looking for little people's welfare through sensible and cooperative means. Such a program could surely open up a path for the SRs to even become czar government, as ironic as the idea may sound. Calmer heads prevail. We'll bring my tank corps down here. Program of the Radical Democrats. What is Russian socialism? It's not adhering to the theories of old academicians. Socialism is a practice. It is a constant struggle against the czars, princes, generals, and politicians. It's a struggle against the rich, the privileged, the exploiter. And in Russia, there's no end to exploiters. What do you think came to the all-nationalized workplace after the fall of the tyrants? We can assure you they did not fall into the hands of the workers, but in the hands of the already privileged. Do you think the Denkins and Wrangels have the interests of the common man at heart? Do you think the cadets care? And Richter's socialist revolutionaries who take the good name of socialism are firing empty promises at landowners they imagine as the poor toilers of Russia. Russian socialism is not concerned with politicking or corruption. Russian socialism is founded in the strong hands of the Yakutan woodcutter from the skilled young dock workers of Petrograd. Instead of stealing, we build. Instead of destroying, we dream of something better. Only we can change the course of Russian history. Vote for the Radical Democratic Party. An electoral pamphlet spread across the country, penned by Vladimir Ospis-Levitsky, chief editor of Ishkra. Anti-communist laws harm the party. Left-wing parties will do worse in the elections. Yes. The resurgence of the all-Russian patriots. This is what we were hoping for right here. The Russian political right has been historically plagued by a sneering at mass politics and relying on the Orthodox Church, the military, and the state apparatus to maintain power. This has created a paradox of a deeply conservative nation with an electoral and efficiency politically right. In fact, it is often joked that the most successful conservative party in Russia is the Liberal Cadet Party, which enjoys large support from the conservative middle class, largely concerned with stability and reliable governance. After Samenkov, the all-Russian Patriotic Party has filled much of the void on the right, winning back those lost to the SZRS and SOR as the rightmost major party in Russian politics. The current party chairman, Alexander Dmitrievich Golskin, is a moderate character, a proponent of reasonable patriotism and monarchism, who opposed political violence and illegality at every turn. Golskin's leadership has often been backed by the VSZ, All-Russian Union of Landowners, veterans organizations such as the Union of Volunteers, and the Orthodox Church. However, much of the party's current strength comes from the electoral grassroots movements of the so-called People's Patriots, a political movement around Solomonovich brothers. They seek to build a new Russian conservatism, one that is less aristocratic and elite, a snub no doubt directed at Golston. Ivan Lunovich Solomonovich has already gathered a cult following, especially in the northern branch of the party, and is on a steady course to become the most popular politician in the VPP. A new form of conservatism. Right-wing parties will do better in the election 3 times because we favored the Orthodox Church, we favored Peter Wrangel, and the status quo favors the party. The Manchurian Curse. 10 years ago in 1928, what began as an incident on the Chinese Eastern Railway became a full-scale military expedition under General Konstantin Sakharov. Sakharov, advancing boldly and far too quickly against the poorly armed Chinese forces, eventually came to a halt before Mundangjiang. In the snow of the Manchurian winter, Sakharov suffered a crippling defeat against the combined forces of Zhang Zuolin's forces and the Japanese Chosin army, while the main Russian forces were only being transported to the east. The war turned into a humiliating, destabilizing defeat for the young Russian Republic. The defeat reminded many of the catastrophe in 1905 and was followed by the similar political turmoil culminating in Vasily Boldarov's coup attempt, the Christmas purge enacted by General Kornilov, and a great loss of face to the SR President Nikolai Afghanistevi. Many point to it as the beginning of the escalating political instability, which only halted by the election of Boris Savinkov in 1934. The far eastern frontier has been quiet but in a state of constant underfunding. While Japan is regarded as a rival, the budget never seemed to prioritize these far-flung parts of the nation, even though the shortfalls of the far eastern military district was already seen in 1928. It's hardly the priority. No, at least start renovating of the famed Vladivostok fortress. We'll lose 20 political power. We gain 5 army experience. We get 3 coastal forts, 3 land forts, and the Far East military district is strengthened against an uprising. Though the uprising doesn't matter now, if we were still playing as there would be privatization of the state businesses, gets rid of the remnants of Vosneshnina. We'll pacify the North Caucasus. The campaign kicks off. The electoral campaign of all of the major parties has begun, both seeking to revitalize their own base and attract new voters, especially those lost to the SZRS years ago. The cadets are running an unsurprising campaign with major regional differences, pushing more liberal candidates in cities and more conservative ones in the countryside. They're being harassed by the right by the VPP, which has managed to energize many national students and is at their strongest in the middle class areas. On the left, there's the complete complex struggle between the 2 socialist revolutionary parties fighting in the rural regions, and the 2 alongside the RDP in cities. All 3 have energetic grassroots campaigners touring the country. Which party has the best stars? We'll be doing the Patriots Party, which is up here. As you can see, the current VPP-led coalition seems likely, so we'll do the Patriots Party. Don't have enough political power to do that. Hopefully Beijing will be pretty well to hold out and fight. They are helping the Shandong clique right now. Or they're not. Sorry, who are they helping? The Guangxi clique. These guys. There's South Zili, or Northern Zili aligned. You're whatever that one is, and you're Federalist. Okay. Pact with the far left. It's no secret that despite the ban on communistic organization, communism has not gone anywhere in Russia. Many outwardly moderate left-wing organizations, even the RDP itself, has plenty of members sympathetic to the revolution, and even the moderate party leadership has recognized this, trying to balance between moderating the radicals and using them to gain political influence. Despite serious persecutions under Savinkov's regime, there was a good number of these socialist organizations largely operating on a local scale that are seeking to make tactical electoral alliances with the RDP. The potential allies include organizations like General Jewish Labor Bund in Russia, the Muslim Workers' Party of Kazan, and the Yukut Union of Labor. A large number of smaller organizations. In addition, the Party of Left Socialist Revolutionaries has many socialists on their list and seeks to cooperate with rural regions where they are admittedly stronger than us. Worker cooperation will prevail. Left-wing parties will do better in the elections. After the elections, left-wing anger changes by 1, gets event demonstrations against the military. That's where we'll have to start watching for. The coronation today marks the day Kirillovich Romanov, grandson of the Emperor Alexander II, the Liberator, ascends to the throne of the Russian Empire. It is rather fitting for Kirill to be in this position. While he was in Petrograd in 1917, he worked with moderates to ensure the establishment of a constitutional monarchy. In the 1921 Constituent Assembly, his attempt to establish just that had just fallen short. He remained away from politics for some time, though donating to monarchist and conservative causes. For Romanov, he is rather liberal, lacking any autocratic tendencies, but remains a stern figure, one who seeks moderate solutions and will not tolerate the rise of either the far right or the far left. Long may he reign. We gain 5% stability and abysmal imperial popularity, which grants war support negative 15%. Ouch. The Russian Imperial Restoration. Shocking news from Russia. The monarchy has returned in the Third All-Russian Constituent Assembly, the Duma, with the insistence of Army Chief Petr Wrangel, has selected to restore the monarchy, citing that it would bring the stability and order that the Republic badly needed. Kirill I has been crowned as the Emperor of all the Russians, and he promises to abide by a democratic constitution like his predecessors. However, the elections are to be held soon, which will no doubt determine the future direction of the reborn empire. The empire returns. Very good for us, and there we go. We've got Kirill I, daily political power gain plus 0.10 and 5% stability. The March on Dublin elections were held in the Irish Republic. The island nation, which won its independence from the British Empire in the wake of the Weltkrieg, was set to achieve economic growth and security by entering Middle Europa, has found itself thrown into turmoil the past year by Black Monday. As a result, the run-up to the election was the most antagonistic the Irish have had yet. Eamon de Valera was elected president as the head of a coalition government. However, the coalition terms, agreeing to leave the controversial ultra privilege alone, were leaked to public outrage. Consequently, the Irish government's been overthrown and mass marched on Dublin by the far-right paramilitarily known as the National Guard, which tactics support from the Irish military and police. So, Ewan O'Duffy, the paternal autocrats, have taken power in Ireland. As always, the Irish are opposite of their neighbor. We might try to get them into our party. Alf Landon has actually seemed to still stabilize. See, President Landon. Wonder if he did that one. Demonstrations against the military. Who elected Peter Rangel? Asked the signs carried by protesters who had gathered in the Red Square of Moscow. One of the most visible leaders of the protest was Valentin Fyodorovich Bulkov, a Christian anarchist and Tolstoyan pacifist. The march against the military has drawn all manners of people around the anarchists, including more socialist anarchists from the Society of Kropotkin and even more average socialists. The many demands of the protesters are to free the political prisoners that the army arrested during the state of emergency, end the state of emergency, and an end to army interference in politics. On a broader scale, it is protest against the constantly escalating world tension and agnostic rhetoric that many in the Russian officer corps have adopted. Some are flying red flags and demanding international peace between all nations, but at least they sang hymns instead of the international. Disperse them or let them protest. We gain negative 4% war support, negative 4% stability. Left-wing parties do better in the election. We'll lose 2% stability now, but the left-wing anger we have to keep down or we will get couped. So I'm going to let them protest. They're not going to do anything well in the election, so it doesn't matter. I hate to lose the war support and stability, but I promise you, when I say that if it jumps too high, we'll be cooked. We could fund the laugh and then do this for some political power. The socialists mobilized. The decks have always been stacked against the socialists in post-Civil War Russia. Regardless, the socialist field organization had always been very vibrant, passed around the red islands of industry dotted across Russia and extended far into the rural regions in the form of sawmills and mines. The labor organizations have started very active electoral support campaigns, spreading leaflets and holding rallies. Both the radical Democrats and the left socialist revolutionaries are cooperating against the bourgeoisie parties in many regions and have become far more emboldened than in the past. Many of the organizers can proudly claim to have stood up to Savinkov and are riding on the still existing discontent towards the establishment parties. In some cases, situations become heated. In Petrograd, a young man from the People's Monarchist have been destroying socialist posters. A radical veterans organization in Voronov broke up an SR rally. A union meeting house in Avdos was burned. The police are generally keeping order, but the mood remains tense. Just maintain peace. I'm going to do the international propaganda. I know that loses us a lot of our power projection, but I need political power. Also builds weekly war support by 50%, which will be very nice for us later on. So we'll do that one. We can fund the laugh in Lithuania, but they are incredibly weak. So to Sicily, social conservative, your national populists. You're still do that for production output cost, negative 2.5%. All right, we'll read this and then we will end the episode because we're going a little bit long right now. I just wanted to try to get to the elections at least, but the monarchy has been restored. The extent of privatization, we're left with many massive state-owned and managed industrial conglomerates, which have turned out to be rotten. They only function because the government could regulate prices and wages arbitrarily and thus hid any inefficiencies. After furious debates in the Duma about the fate of these state companies, two main proposals have been drafted. The most moderate proposal is that of Pavel Bushkin, a longtime businessman and politician, whose privatization plan seeks to maintain the integrity of those state companies, but would simply put them in private hands and maintain their contracts with the state. This would ensure that critical industries are not disturbed. An entirely opposite opinion comes from the top economist of the SRs, Nikolai Kondrathy, who has drafted a plan that would split the non-essential companies into small portions, who would be privatized with preference toward founding new small companies instead of giving the rich even more. Better not to rock the boat, or we have a chance of fair capitalism. That will help social liberalism and social democracy. We gain 5% stability, or better not rock the boat. We gain 80 political power, Change it in popularity of Marco liberalism plus 2% and social conservatism 2%. Social liberalism is the PSR. I like the stability because we are negative stability. Political power, only 30. We did use that one to get more political power. Not a big fan of the change for social liberalism and social democracy because we're trying to do VPP right now. Stability is nice though. Let's see. What do I think this government would do? That would split the non-essential companies into small portions and privatize. You're still privatizing. Most moderate is this one though. A chance of fair capitalism. Sure, let's take that stability. Restriction of major donors. One criticism that the SZRS loved to point out was how often the establishment parties, the cadets in particular, enjoy sizable electoral funding from business elites. With their wealth to be spent on political campaigns, it's no surprise the cadets could maintain a large share of the Duma seats than they should have, at least according to their critics. However, very few outside of the left truly protested because all of them have their own financial backers. But in turn, temporary limit on the spending might reduce tensions and make the whole election seem fair, especially to the left. It's a free country. We get plus 25 political power, activates mission, return the favor. The cadets will do better, and the right-wing parties will do better. My biggest thing for that one is we lose 20 political power, yeah, but the left-wing anger at the end is it's way worth it for us instead of the return the favor. Because I don't remember what that one does. I couldn't imagine it being any good. So we will just do the left-wing anger changes by -1 after the election. That will help us quite a bit. All right, with that though, we're going to end episode 3. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.